Hi, and this is our Track 1 webinar for the Engage Collaborative, the fourth learning session on launching the first Patient Family Advisory Council meetings. Just to be sure that everybody's on the correct webinar, Track 1 is where we are working to establish patient and family advisory councils and other ways to engage patients and families as partners in our operations and improvement. And we work with Libby Hoy and PFCC partners as our guides in the process. And this journey is on through September 23rd of this year. It's been about now 2 months since our last webinar, and that one was, you will remember, on the training and orienting patient-family advisors. Since then, we have been in contact with many of you, most of the teams, through coaching calls. And today, in addition to learning new content from Libby, you will also have a chance to briefly hear from each other about how each team is doing and each organization is doing. But what I'd first like to do is give a bit of logistical information about the webinar. We are recording it for future reference, and all phone lines are unmuted. So everybody is unmuted, and we count on you to mute your lines as needed to eliminate the background noise, and do not put us on hold, but use the mute button instead. Or you can dial 4* to mute and then 4* again to unmute. Here's a chat function that you can use to ask questions or make comments, and you can direct it to any individual person who is on the webinar or to everybody on the whole group. And now, as every time, we'd like to make sure that we know who all is in attendance today. So I would like to ask you now to type into the chat box the names of anyone who is attending as part of a group. Anybody whose name may not be showing up as logged in on the webinar, we'd love to have their name captured and connected with a team or an organization in the chat box. A quick reminder, today's program, like all our webinars, has been approved for continuing education, for quality, for nursing, and for healthcare executives. And here's our full schedule for Track 1. Our program materials, as you know, are all available on HQI Engage website. On the member portal, you can see up there how you can log in and what's the password for the portal if you need that handy. You can also see that the 2 dates left for individual coaching calls, August 17th and August 30th, are still on. As you know, coaching calls are kind of an integral part of the program. Each team is expected to have at least 2 of them during the program. So if you haven't had 2 yet, we would love to have you contact Nicole, and you can also see her contact information on the slide, and schedule a coaching call on one of those 2 remaining dates. You can also see with the first red arrow that we have 1 learning session remaining, and that's on August 31st on the topic of sustainability. And finally, as you can see on the second arrow, that we'll be completing the program with a capstone event, which is going to be held on September 16th. We've been announcing this date for a few months now, so we hope and expect that all of you will be there on the 16th of September, along hopefully with some of your newly minted patient-family advisors. And so let me give you just a few details about the capstone event. Sutter Health and Roberta Mori, their Director of Patient Experience, have graciously offered to host the event at their Green Valley Conference Center in Fairfield, which is in the Bay Area. You can see the full address on the slide. We're going to start with breakfast and networking at 9, but the program will begin at 10 and end at 3. And so it's going to be a rather short meeting, and we think it's going to be conducive to same-day travel, even if you have to fly in from Southern California. We have placed all the information that you need about capstone event on the website and on the on HQI's website on Engage, and this includes the registration link, which you can see on this slide. And just a note that this will be a joint event for both tracks of Engage, so you will be in good company with other folks who are working on some safety-specific engagement of patients and families. And registration, of course, is free of charge, but we do ask that each person who plans to attend register. And here I'm going to show you a screenshot of our website screen. So if you go on HQI website under Engage, you navigate to Capstone Event. This is the menu. It offers you various documents. Click here to register. That's very important. We really want everybody to register to help us plan for the event. Draft agenda, team presentation guide, and PowerPoint template, as well as a travel reimbursement policy. Those are all the components here you can obtain more information on. As you know, the event will be a showcase and also a celebration of all of your achievements in the Engage program. And because of that, we are asking that each team develop a 5 to 8 minute presentation and then deliver it at the event that showcases your work. I won't go over the details now, and I think Libby may later in the webinar cover some of those things that you may want to consider hitting in your presentations. But please do refer to this website for the detailed presentation guide that you can see here, and also the PowerPoint template if you choose to do PowerPoint. Let me add that you don't need to do a PowerPoint. You should feel free to be as creative as you want and use any format and style that you feel like. You can act, do skits, role plays, poetry, videos, drawings. Anything is open, and we want to have your creative juices freely flowing. The main thing, whatever you do, is send your presentation materials, whatever they are, to ASMA by this deadline of September 2nd that you see on the screen, and you see ASMA's email. And don't forget to include your patient family advisors into your presentation if you'd like and if you have them and if they're interested. So definitely encouraging you to do that. We want to definitely make sure that you all attend this capstone event, and to make it easier, especially knowing that some of you will have to fly by airplane, HQI will help cover your travel expenses, and here's some details on that. We can cover up to $250 per person, and up to 4 people can be covered from each hospital. Again, please bring any of your patient family advisors. They can certainly also be reimbursed as part of your 4 from each hospital. And we can reimburse things like airfare, ground transportation, airport parking, car mileage over 100 miles round trip, and tolls and things like that. We can't reimburse lodging and meals, and again, that's why we have set up the start and end time to allow for same-day air travel, and there will be food at the event. But again, more on that is on the website under travel reimbursement policy that you see circled here, and I'm going to quickly transition to remind you of who we all are, who is behind Engage Track 1 from Hospital Quality Institute as well as PFCC partners. And I thank you for your patience in indulging some of these details about the capstone event. Don't hesitate to let us know if you have any questions. And actually, if somebody has any questions, you can chat them or you can just let us know. So I'll pause just for a minute just to see if anybody has questions. And if not, I will now hand it over to Libby to lead us through the rest of the webinar.
Thank you, Boris. And thanks, everybody, for joining. I know it's been a long break, but I think between Lindsay and I, we've talked with most everybody in between. So I know you've been working hard on your recruitment and your orientation. And before we get into the sort of team check-in, I just want to take a minute to acknowledge those of you who have been filling out the evaluations following each learning session. We do really take those to heart and look at those and try to adapt and ensure that we're meeting your expectations and your needs. And so from some of the feedback that we received of the learning session was a bit long, and so we've done our best with the material on this learning session to be as concise as we possibly can and sort of still get those major points across. This learning session, I will say, allows us a little bit more flexibility that way than some of the others. And the other piece of that is around the team report out or check-ins. this has been set up as a learning collaborative, and so with that, we want to provide ample opportunity for collaborative learning. And so we know that the team report outs do provide an opportunity to learn from your peers that are, sort of at the same stage and going through the same process as each of you are. So we will continue to provide that opportunity as well. So today's objectives are to do that check-in. We'll start to plan the agenda for the first encounter. So I say encounter because some of you are developing patient-family advisory councils, and some of you are integrating advisors into existing councils. And so we'll talk about that first encounter piece. That you'll have a good understanding for the value and need of storytelling in a very specific manner and context. And then finally, that you'll learn some strategies for reducing the anxiety of the advisor's first interaction. So in terms of reviewing the assignment, the orientation plan, and really looking at that in those three buckets, providing context to organizations or hospital, providing context to the patient-family advisory council or team that you're having your advisors integrate onto, and then finally the preparation for the role of advisor itself. So with that, if I could, Roberta, if I could put you on the spot first, could you just kind of sum up what Sutter has been working on?
Sure. So we have been putting together, can you hear me okay?
I can, great.
We've been putting together a standard approach for our patient-family advisory councils. We have 8 inpatient hospitals going through the program, and what we've done is design templates for the roles and responsibilities, helping them with the onboarding process, and Morgan and Suzanne have been working to put together some of the tools that we'll need for the orientation and first meeting. So what we're trying to do is really focus on a standard approach with this work so that we can provide them with the tools that they'll need to orient their patient-family advisors and cut the time frame down. We have created a handbook, and the materials that we have put together we have posted on the HQI website. So you guys are welcome to take a look at those and see if you have any thoughts or feedback. They're all draft. I know we'll be making more changes as we move forward.
No.
That's it.
Great, Roberta. Thank you so much. Let's see. How about the folks at Alhambra Hospital? Can you give us a little update on what you guys have been working on? Oops, you might be on mute. Eunice?
Yes, hi. Hi, Holly. Hi, Libby. Yes. I'm sorry, I was... Yeah.
Hi.
I'm sorry, what was your question again?
We're just doing a team check-in and get a little update on how your efforts around recruitment and orientation are going.
Yes, right now we're still developing our, the orientation guideline and everything. But we do have few events that we reach out more than 300 to 400 people. And not only our patients, of course that event including all the members in this community, but most of them are our previous patients. And then we reach out to our family members, as patient family members as well, to give them the information about this patient family advisory council is coming up. And a lot of people are very interested in that. But during right now, it's the summertime, so most of them are not available. And we have identified 4 to 5 people that might be a bit good candidate for us. So we're still working on it. Hopefully by the end of July or the beginning of August, we will be able to hear them back, and then we can start everything.
That's great, and I would think I like that you're providing such a broad reach to your patient-family community. And I think 4 or 5 is a great starting place, a great starting number. So I would encourage you to continue on with your process then.
Okay, thank you so much.
No problem. Chris and Robin from Santa Rosa, how are things going over there?
Things are going pretty well with us. This is Chris, sorry. I have interviewed 3 of the 4 patients, and they seem great and ready to go and very eager to start, and I'm interviewing the 4th one this afternoon.
Sounds good. Are you learning a lot in those interviews?
I am. I've heard all of their stories naturally, and we have a very diverse group, which I'm really happy about. We have one from Women's Services, one that's a joint replacement, one that's general surgery, and one that is a cancer patient.
Wow, good that you have that diversity. And how are the orientation plans coming along?
They're coming. I'm trying to kind of tailor it to meet the needs of these 4 individuals and see when we can figure out where to do the interviews and how to kind of keep them short and sweet, because we do have some time constraints.
Sure, makes sense. Great. Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right. How about Shasta Regional? Do we have anybody on from there today?
It doesn't look like we have. Anybody from Shasta? No.
Nope. Okay, let's see. How about Kauai Delta? I know you've had a bit of a shift in your focus for the moment, and I don't know if you wanted to address that.
Yeah, hi, Libby. This is Ed.
Hi.
We are going to push our launch date. We won't be able to launch in September, but probably later on this year or early in 2017.
Welcome to conference calling. We will now connect you to your call.
They have their web page developed, and they're actively accepting applications and they're beginning the interview process.
Great.
So I think, Libby, once we hear no more entries into the audio for a few seconds, I think you can begin.
Okay.
And I really apologize again on our behalf at HQI. There was a technical glitch that disconnected everybody on the webinar. And thank you for dialing back in quickly.
Technology. Okay, I think, Ed, we left off just as, or at least I dropped off just as you were starting your sentence. Did you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I was just saying that we are going to push our launch date back from September to later on in the year or early 2017, mainly because of organizational timing. We will still continue to track with the webinars, and we've already developed the format for our applications and referrals, as well as mapped out the orientation framework.
Thank you, Ed. I appreciate you sharing, and one of the reasons I really encouraged you to do so is for a reminder for all that we understand that there are competing priorities in every organization, and focus sometimes shift. I remember when we did patients on board and the Ebola virus broke out. It certainly called people's attention elsewhere, and that happens. And what I think is really important is that you're kind of hanging in there with the learning sessions, you're taking the tools, and you will implement on the timeline that makes sense for your organization. That's really what we want to do. We want to provide you a process and to follow, whether you're developing a traditional sort of PFAC or whether you're developing engagement in other existing committees, to follow it in the way that makes the most sense for your particular organization, but always encouraging you to utilize the resources and support that you have available to do so. So thanks, Ed. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thanks, Libby.
How about Santa Clara? Do we have anybody? No? How about Tom, Monterey Peninsula? All right, Sonoma Valley?
Hello. We are still in the recruitment process. We've received 2 applications, which we will be starting next week.
Great.
But, yeah, we are on a bit of a slower timeline than meeting in September, but hopefully we'll have a couple of advisors in place by the end of August, and we can start the orientation and move forward with that.
Sounds good. And in the meantime, just keeping your referrals out in the environment so that you can continue to collect those applications.
Yeah, we were just talking about that. Continuing to encourage, passing them out, making sure all of the places where they're located is stocked, and moving out into the community and having them available at community centers and community locations, I think, is going to be important for us.
Excellent. Sounds like you've got a robust plan. Just keep moving, making progress down the line in the timeline that makes sense to your organization.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Oops, it just got loud here, didn't it? Anyone else? Did I miss anyone?
Is there anyone from San Antonio on the line?
Kim's here from San Antonio. I'm not in charge of the project. I know we have 2 advisors that have agreed to do it. I believe that Rita has the orientation planned, but in all honesty, I'm not sure what comes next with as far as what she has planned.
Okay. Great. Anyone else?
This is Roberta. I was wondering if maybe Mary from SMCS might want to share where you guys are.
Sure. Can you guys hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I wasn't sure if you had shared for everyone or if I was supposed to do it individually, but I'm happy to. So we have 4 advisors to date that are going through our volunteer service onboarding, and I think we're getting close to them being actually done, and then we'll do an orientation with them. However, 3 of our 4 are experienced advisors on existing councils from our pediatrics and some from NICU. So we are pulling them in to do things already. So we've had one of our advisors help with a lean event. She gave feedback on our discharge process. She felt very passionately about that and the experiences she's had recently and some changes that she has seen. So she was able to give that information to that work group, and they were able to take that to the whole team as they designed the discharge process improvements that they're going to be doing. I brought 2 of them in, I think it was on Monday, and they reviewed the new handbook that we'll be giving to all patients that come to the hospital, and they had some great suggestions. And then our first meeting, we're shooting for either late August or the beginning of September. And we're obviously still recruiting.
Terrific. Well, and I know we had a chance to talk a little bit about the orientation to the specific projects, which is, again, important to understand where that green centerpiece of the orientation plan is around the specific engagement opportunity that your advisors are going to have. So whether, again, that's a PFAC or whether that's a lean team, giving them that contextual information is so important. And do we have anybody else who we've missed?
I see in chat that Alexi is back from Santa Clara. Are you online?
Yeah. Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Sorry, I got disconnected. So I guess we're ahead a little bit. We just actually kicked off 2 PFA patient advisory teams this month of June, one on the 3rd and one on the 14th, specifically for one of our clinics in a very specific group, the homeless healthcare group. And it's very challenging, but I would say it was a successful event. We have about at least 5 to 7 advisors in each group. We're still, going through on affirming of our, orientation, what works, what doesn't work. So we got a feedback from, our advisors from that. So we'll probably just, revamp some areas. And then in terms of just being out there, we're working continuously in making our program be known to the community and to our organization. Currently, right now, we are utilizing resources that we have, such as our intranet system. We have banners in place in every entrances. We engage with our volunteer services so we can utilize them in, either passing out brochures or flyers or just talking, to visitors that come in and out the hospital and the clinics. And every Wednesday we do have farmers markets, so we do engage in that community event to get us known to, to the rest. And then getting our physicians on board in terms of partnering with us so that they can do some referral. One of our core staff actually designed a referral card, is what we called, and he's still doing some tweaks here and there that we can hand off and educate the physicians and other staff so that if they feel like they have a patient that best fits our program, that they could actually fill this out and either send it or fax it back to us in the department. Hello?
Thank you, Alexi. We've been hearing
I'm so
a little
sorry,
bit
I
of
was
background noise.
Alexi, it sounds like you've been doing a great job doing a very broad recruitment effort. So just, just as a reminder, kind of keeping in alleviating your staff and physicians from feeling like they need to identify sort of the right person, and just really getting your referral form directly to the patients and families for their opportunity to self-refer, so you're not missing out on any of those folks that may not may fly under the radar in terms of your clinical staff. So, but great effort, and you know, as you continue to develop your orientation plan, please let us know if we can be supportive of that in any way. I just returned from the Institute for Patient Family-Centered Care International Conference and presented the PFA preparation program that we use, and really heard back from advisors and staff alike how valuable it was to really have that context, because the more context we have, the more we understand our lane for impact, and the more that we can really impact the quality and safety and experience improvement that your organizations are setting about. I also really love the diversity on this conversation in the places and applications you're using patient-family advisors. It really speaks to the idea that you've all really gotten the concept that this is a key strategy that you can apply across improvement efforts. Great job.
Thank you.
It will be a fun capstone event to showcase all that great diversity that you guys are doing.
Yes, I am. I'm excited, and I'm really glad that, you know, for this event to come, and we'll definitely share what we have.
Great.
Very nice. Anyone else?
Deborah Mensch from SADA, did you want to contribute? And apologies again for the disconnectedness.
All right, well, we will forge ahead with the content for today, but certainly putting in questions or thoughts into the chat box and really taking full advantage of the peer learning opportunity that we have through the H2I Engage program. All right, so gateway number 4, learning session 4, the first meeting, and I use that term very, again, I should change it to encounter across the way, because whether you're having a PFAC meeting per se, or whether you're engaging your advisors onto improvement teams of different varieties, whatever that first encounter is, we know that there's a few things that really simultaneously set the stage for future integration and engagement practices. And remember, the Gateways program is really about setting the structure in your organization. So while you're onboarding these new advisors, you're setting the stage for that co-learning about how an advisory program best works in your organization. And so this work is, again, about setting that structure in your organization to build from, setting the framework there. So there are a few things we know need to happen in that first encounter that set you up for success in a sustainable model. And so that's what we'll be talking about today. The strong agenda really helps to establish relationships that facilitate making those connections, set some expectations. We've been talking about that all the way through for the Gateways program, really developing your sort of mutual set of expectations about what this work is going to look like, moving away from making assumptions about people and their motivations, and really, capturing some of those expectations, building on the work that you've already done through your charter and through your orientation. It also provides a foundation for you to fall back on when things come up, when things get slippery, as sometimes they do in this effort. So things, and we'll be talking a lot more about some of those sort of slippery spots, I guess you could call them, in the sustainability practices. But when those things come up, you really want to provide this foundation that we've kind of done this work and now we're moving forward. So some of the activities will be reintroducing your vision statement again. You'll be reviewing the charter again. So all of those pieces are another opportunity for your advisors to get to see what your vision is and what your charter, how you're looking at this framework for your organization. Now, again, that means that in 3 months we can go back and we can co-design that, but you're presenting your thoughts for this initial startup. very important, and we'll spend most of the time today talking about providing time for storytelling. It really establishes those relationships again, and what we know is if we provide ample time and opportunity for that to happen in the first meeting, it doesn't come up over and over and over again. And we'll be talking more about that. And then reviewing the organizational structure. So a lot of review and some storytelling, basically the activities in the first meeting. We also know that it's critical to the success of the system, of the system that you're setting up for patient-family engagement, to hold a very structured first meeting. So although we'll be providing storytelling, there will be some structure that we're going to build into that so that we can move from the storytelling forward into the work. So in terms of preparing for your success, who needs to be in that first meeting? I strongly encourage you and your leaders who are activated in this process to be there. So someone from the C-suite. We often see, I would even go so far as to say there's a standard being established that a CEO or COO attends this first meeting and demonstrates, by providing their time, demonstrates their commitment and demonstrates the organizational commitment to engaging patients and families. It's just the subtle message both to your advisors and to your staff, really critical in seeing activated leadership in this effort. Staff members and staff member roles. So in that way, I'm talking about the team that you've been going through the Gateways program with, and we'll be talking about specific roles for them. We want to set an agenda, but we want to keep it very, very simple. And we'll be giving you some samples of that. But again, reviewing the vision statement, reviewing the charter, setting those expectations. Of course, we all like to get the agenda ahead of time. Patient and families who are serving as advisories, especially in their first meeting, have a certain level of anxiety. What's going to be expected of me? What am I going to do? How do I dress? Where am I going to go? How do I find that boardroom? All of those pieces, so as much as we can reduce that anxiety for the first meeting, the better the quality of that meeting, the better the storytelling, the better the connections, and the more sustainable in the future. I often get asked on the agenda, why is the facilitator setting the agenda? At the first meeting, we need some framework. So it's a big ask to have advisors, who have gone through your orientation practices, come in and really be able to meaningfully set an agenda with you. What happens when we ask advisors to do that is they haven't gotten a chance to know the real work of the organization yet and the improvement work going on. So if you're going to ask an advisor to set an agenda with you without providing any framework, you're going to get suggestions for projects and programs that, while they may be great, are not going to fly in your organization because that's not the organizational priorities yet. And so that's the reason we really encourage the facilitator to set out the first one or two agendas, and then as they get an understanding of the values and the priorities of the organization, then they can really start to talk about programs that would support you in meeting your strategic goals. And then set up and anticipate an evaluation. And so especially at the outset, as you're co-designing these patient-family engagement efforts, you want to continually evaluate so you can continually respond. And so just building that in from the outset is really helpful to the advisors so that it becomes very standard for them. Including the logistics, I think, is the best way or quickest way to alleviating some of that anxiety. Being specific about a meeting location and times, any items that are going to be important. If they're going to have to show an ID at the front desk, preview that for them. The agenda circulated ahead of time, and make sure that you have kind of all those pieces you need for a successful first meeting in hand. So here's a sample agenda that may just be, again, it's very simple, and we're going to give the bulk of the first encounter, the bulk of the time to getting to know each other, to doing that storytelling in the framework of the improvement and the patient-family engagement effort. following the introductions or the storytelling piece, it's really important that you pull it back into the charter. The reason for that is, as we're all sharing stories and as we're all establishing those relationships, we're sort of leading with the heart, if you will. And what we have found is that if we end that first meeting on leading with the heart, we pick up the second meeting still in the heart mode. And in order to move the patient-family advisors into that co-design, full partner, and improvement with you, we want to pull them back into the structure of what we're doing. And so that's why following the storytelling in that first meeting, go back and review the charter so that you're building the framework for how these experiences your advisors have had are going to inform the work moving forward. You want to review the role of the patient-family advisor. And again, this is a critical piece because as we're sharing our stories, we're really speaking from that patient and family mode or role. And now we want to intentionally shift people back into that advisor role. These are really critical in setting up your advisors for being impactful advisors and understanding that role differentiation from when they're in the first person sharing their story to when they're serving in the role of advisor. So that's, those two pieces can be very helpful in setting the stage for the second encounter or the ongoing work together. So in terms of planning, of course, we were sharing the agenda earlier, provide specific directions, including any security processes. Again, this can be, presumably your advisors have been to your facility before, and that's great, but just, again, reiterating those and making it a little bit easier. I really encourage folks to have a greeter. So if you're engaging a patient-family advisor on a lean team, then having someone at the front desk to meet them and walk them to where that meeting room is, this gives a couple of minutes for an informal check-in and an opportunity for the advisor to, again, reduce that anxiety. I think it's important in this first meeting as well to set an expectation of staff participants to share. So your teammates who are on the Gateway team, if we're going to use this first encounter as a level setting activity, then we want our staff colleagues to also be willing to share. And so we don't want to ever put anybody on the spot, staff, advisor, patient, family, anybody on the spot unexpectedly. So I really encourage you to talk as a team and sort of plan that out and think that through. That's not to say that staff members are mandated to share a personal, difficult story. It's the same question as it is for the advisors. What brought you to this room today? So whether you have a professional passion around this or whatever it might be that's motivating you, just opening up a little bit about those motivations sets the table for true collaboration. Inviting the team leader, and we're going to talk about establishing team roles. I like to use a lot of visual aids in these meetings, and I think it's really helpful. It's been helpful to me in my experience as an advisor to have sort of cues around the room. I kind of think about it like when my kids went to kindergarten, and if you've been in a kindergarten class recently, there's just an inundation of of visual cues around the room, so that if their verbal or auditory attention gets a little bit lost, they have some places to pick up. I think it's really, anytime we have adults with a little bit of an elevated anxiety, it's really nice to have that extra piece. So posting a vision statement, whether that's on an overhead screen or a sticky note or on a tent card in the middle of the table, having a charter or handout, using your orientation materials to create a manual or a notebook where they can continue to collect information is really, really helpful. And then, PowerPoint, if you choose to use that. And then a parking lot. Even from the first meeting, I encourage you to introduce a parking lot. So that can be just a giant sticky note on the wall with smaller sticky notes on the table so that when conversation goes off, and notice I didn't say if, because it will. When conversation goes too far astray, you can say, hey, that's a great item for the parking lot. Would you just jot that down really quick so we can draw back to that, when it's a little bit more in line with the agenda. Setting that from the outset makes it, again, standardized. If you wait until you have this issue, then you're calling people out. So I really just encourage you to do that from the outset, from that first meeting, introduce the parking lot. So staff roles, as you're preparing for your first encounter, your first meeting, and again, whether you're doing a traditional PFAC or whether you're doing integrating them onto a team, you have support for that person as they're entering the lean team. And if you can, again, whether if you're in an improvement team, this will be a little bit trickier, but using the team you have here in the Gateways program, identify who's going to be the facilitator. You've identified that. That's been your point person all the way through. That should remain constant or consistent. But somebody else from your team to strictly be responsible for taking notes. Nothing is harder than trying to facilitate a meeting and be a note taker and capture all those great ideas. You don't want to lose anything. So having someone solely focused on that. The facilitator role is tricky in these first meetings because you're going to want to be looking and pulling people out and ensuring that everybody is fully engaged. And then here's a little bit of a different one. It's having someone who is just listening, who is, maybe that person goes first in sharing about their motivations so that they can then be attentive at the remainder of the meeting in terms of listening. So they're not taking notes, but they're really just observing your new advisors and seeing how do they tell their story, how do the other advisors react to them, how does staff react to them when they're telling their story, what other ways might they need it to be supported. We had one great example from an organization we were working with where the listener sort of noted that one of the bilingual participants was having a little bit of difficulty kind of going along with the pace of the verbal, the conversation rather during the meeting. And so they were able to pick up and say, would you feel better or would that be more helpful to you if you had some translation services to support you? That's what you can pick up as a listener. It's not that you're judging them or criticizing them. You're just looking for other opportunities, other ways that you maybe, you as a group may be able to support your participants in being, again, really impactful. So storytelling, the bulk of introductions. We've talked a little bit about the evolution of story and the reason we tell our stories, the reasons we share our stories. And so this being kind of a first encounter it's difficult. I saw this at the IPSCC conference this week. It's difficult for more novice advisors to really be able to share their story in a way that's, not overly long, not overly detailed, all of those things. That comes with practice. In this first meeting, we don't want to necessarily have a lot of expectations around that. So while you can frame the purpose of stories and the purpose of connectedness and the purpose of establishing those relationships, and then we're going to move on into the work in subsequent meetings. You can be creative. This is not my strong suit, so I wish I could have great suggestions for you, but this is certainly an area where the wisdom of the crowds and the collaborative learning style can be very helpful. Some people do this around a singular question. Somebody does prompt storytelling and using a PowerPoint. So there's lots of different ways you can think about doing this. Others do it with having participants write out or color their story, or kind of tell their story on paper. So whatever way your team comes up with, I think this is definitely an area that you can be creative in. I'm so sorry. Okay, so in terms of emotion, don't worry, it happens. This is the place and time for that emotion to sort of come out. You've got a mix of anxiety at first meetings and coming into this role because of what would have been a difficult, or at least at a minimum, a challenging experience in a person's life, and so emotion happens, and that's okay. That's okay. We're providing this space, and you can reinforce that as well, that it's okay in this space of this first meeting. So this is what it's about. We're making those connections. And you can give people the time they need. That's why we don't pack the agenda in the first meeting. And I have to say that many of our novice facilitators want to really pack the agenda because they don't want to be sitting there looking at each other and feeling uncomfortable. I've not seen that happen if you give people the space to tell their stories and just, really be about connection and then providing that back-end framework. We've seen this work incredibly well. I have seen it where the agendas are super packed and half the items don't get attended to. So, give people the time they need. And again, that listener or observer should be learning from how do advisors tell their stories. Are they, what kind of emotion gets conveyed with that, and where might that best be utilized in your improvement efforts, and where might you want to steer that person sort of away from that in your improvement efforts. I love this quote from Robin Roberts. I'm sure most of you know the Good Morning America co-host who had her own battle with cancer. Make your mess your message. We want to provide the opportunity and the framework, again, for advisors to make their mess their message. And so whether you share this quote or this slide with your potential advisors, whether you use this as a prompt for your storytelling, whatever it might be, find some way to provide that anchor to your advisors so that nothing feels worse to us than sharing our story, sort of bearing a bit of our soul, and then really feeling like, well, that was useless or irrelevant or not of interest beyond the emotional impact. So providing some framework to that is really very gratifying and very empowering for your patient-family advisors. This is a review. We talked about this in the orientation, and I hope that you are including this piece in your orientation for your advisors to really, it's important, again, for them, and I just did a preparation course last week with a group of advisors that said, yes, this is the context I needed to understand. How do I move from my personal experience into this advisor role? I'm really comfortable in my personal experience. I'm not so comfortable in this advisor role, but and I'm trying to still get my head around it. So what does that look like? Demonstrating and sharing with them this progression of personal story into, from personal experience into identifying as part of the larger group, all patients and families served at your particular hospital, into combining those two, if you will, into how do I use those experiences and knowledge to represent needs of all patients and families served. I heard at the conference this week an advisor say, I can't represent every patient and family served. And she's absolutely right. We can't have that expectation, and yet at the same time we have to balance that with an openness that our experience isn't the only experience. And so moving to an acknowledgement of that encourages advisors to make those connections with their patient population so that they are able to speak to the representative needs. So while I can't represent every patient and family served here at Miller Children's Hospital where I'm sitting currently, I can represent the needs of a lot of patients. And so that making those subtle shifts really helps advisors to move into that role, get comfortable with that role of advisor, and have larger impact to you. So setting some expectations. First of all, you guys have all worked really hard in this Gateways program, and I really want you to connect the dots for your advisors. That's also empowering for the advisors to understand that your organization has taken this on as an organization-wide strategy. The tendency is for us as advisors to connect really strongly and build those strong relationships, and this is a good thing, to those of you who are facilitating the efforts and your team members. But we also want them to see the larger effort that is being undertaken and how intentional you've been in this process, so that it's not just about these advisors or you as a facilitator, but it's about an organizational commitment and an organizational structure to be able to consistently integrate patient-family engagement as a strategy for improvement. The dynamic nature of the group, that I think it's really important, and we learned this with the National Coordinating Center when we did a nationwide Patient-Family Advisory Council. We missed an opportunity to really call out the dynamics of the group, and that it's an all-teach, all-learn effort. That you as facilitators are starting this journey in your organizations, and that you don't have all the answers, and you'll be looking, for that's why you're doing the evaluation, so that you will have that opportunity to learn from and with your advisors, and so that you can co-design the best possible, most sustainable structure in your individual organization. It's important to state your intention to add members. So some of you will be starting these efforts with maybe 2 or 3 or a handful of advisors as you're working up to that larger group that's more diversity, that represents your diversity profile. It's important with the initial group to state that intention at the outset so that it's not seen so much as a, that they're not good enough or enough or what have you, but rather as a natural process of starting a patient-family engagement effort. And then, of course, the evaluation, setting that standard right there at the first meeting that we'll be continually evaluating. That's how we'll know whether we're having impact together. And one nice thing that you can do maybe in a second or third meeting around the evaluations is design together what will success look like. That can be a nice follow-up way to, number one, check for understanding that you're moving along in the same way and you're in line with where the thinking of your advisors is. But it also can really help you to build in some of those continuous improvement pieces. So some things to keep in mind: you do not have to have all the answers at all. You don't need to be an expert. Just focus on building together. Give your leaders time to bubble up, and this is why we encourage you to hold off on identifying co-chairs. Do some observations and see how your advisors interact with one another, interact with a variety of different staff members, and give them time. They'll almost always, 1 or 2 will bubble up to the surface as having more time than others, having a passion for it, and having some intrinsic leadership skills that you can build on. Transparency is your friend. When you get into a moment of designing an agenda or integrating a patient-family advisor because you think that's what they want, or you're thinking about an agenda item and you can't decide, is this important? How are we going to keep these advisors busy? When we start thinking about how we're going to keep advisors busy, you're too far out of the line of your organization. Pull it back into your strategic plan, your strategic goals, and see, how you can get better alignment. This is an effort for you to have another resource, another tool towards your improvement efforts. It's not a customer service effort unless customer service is your strategic goal. So it's really important that you keep that in mind when you're thinking about, how do I pack this agenda, how do I come up with stuff? You shouldn't be coming up with stuff. It's already there in your organization. Go back into it so that your advisor efforts are in line and integrated with the heart of your organization. Then you can ask yourself, does this agenda item add value to the organization, to the advisor, or to the group? Does it add more information, more context to the advisor? Does it add to your improvement team? Is it another piece of information? If it does, then add it. If it doesn't, if it doesn't, then don't add it. If it does, present it, get some feedback, let it marinate a little bit, and then move it into part of your ongoing agenda. Starting is the most important thing you can do. Don't wait until everything is perfect in your organization, because guess what? I haven't seen an organization that's perfect yet. So none of us are. But getting started and committing to the continuous improvement cycle is a great way to go. So some common pitfalls that I just want to call to your attention. I think we're pretty confident if you're following this program, you're going to avoid most of these. But every once in a while, we miss something in an interview or an application, what have you. So I just wanted to call these out and have you keeping them in mind in terms of things that you wanted to avoid. The Patient Family Advisory Council turning into a support group, I think this is a high risk. So when we have that first meeting and we're all storytelling, the natural empathy is flowing heavily, and your advisors are going to connect on a really strong level, and they may want to support one another in their patient-family advisor role. Making clear, pulling back into the charter, that's why, another good reason to pull back into the charter at the end of the meeting is to establish this patient-family advisor effort as separate from that. And delineating those roles is really helpful in that way, so that folks can get support get the support that they need from the appropriate places to get it, whether that's peer support or elsewhere, but that your patient-family advisory efforts are true to that collaboration around improvement. Some unrealistic expectations, again, this is why we build expectations into charter orientation and first meeting, so that we're less likely to have some of those unrealistic expectations. When those come up, or if they get voiced, being true to your mission or vision, leaning back into your charter, those are all great ways to kind of debunk some of those unrealistic expectations. That these are the things that you stayed true to all the way through. That's why you're setting the structure. So lean into it when you need to dispel some of those unrealistic expectations. Lack of leadership or a weak agenda. Again, the weak agenda to me means it's too far outside the heart of your organization, what your organization needs. Lack of leadership, you guys have a leadership team in this work, and so I'm not anticipating any unnecessary issues there. Oftentimes in organizations that don't follow such an intentional process to set the structure, but rather jump in with all of the best of intentions, we sometimes see kind of a shifting, who's the point person for this, who owns this, is it quality, is it the patient experience, is it, you've got all those pieces in place, so really leaning into those and articulating those to your advisors. And while you are grateful, and I always encourage you to express your gratitude for your advisors giving their time, sharing their experiences, and recognizing that that's not always easy. This is not solely a customer service effort. This is about improving the quality and safety of care for your patients and families. And so this, this is why, you put in all that structure. Here's a couple of my favorite resources, and we certainly have others. HQI has a wonderful portal for you with more samples and information, but some national resources for support. The Institute of Medicine has a Patient Family Advisor Leadership Network. It's currently designed for the co-chairs, the patient family advisors who are co-chairing. So I'll keep you posted on that. I actually just sat down with a new staff member from the IOM who'll be leading that effort. I sat down with her yesterday and really suggested that we open that a bit broader to support all patients and families serving in an advisory role across settings. And so right now, if you want more information about this, and certainly I'll keep you posted as well if I learn more, but they're sort of revitalizing that network. The IPSCC has a Patient Family Advisory Council listserv. You can get there through ipscc.org. That listserv is a great resource for all of you who are facilitating these efforts. It is a robust listserv of different topics and things, but I will say it's predominantly populated by folks like yourselves in these positions as a staff facilitator for these efforts. The Patient Family Advisor Network is the PFCC Partners Network, and that is populated by the patient family advisors themselves. So that's another point of connection for your advisors as they're on their learning journey around what the role of advisors is. That is populated by over 300 patient-family advisors serving in different settings across the country. So, there is absolutely, and you can tell I'm very excited having just come off the conference, but I can tell you there's so much work going on in this area. There is no reason to reinvent the wheel anywhere. And certainly HQI is helping to build a community in California to help support and make those connections. So anytime you're stuck, there's plenty of places to go. And certainly I offer PFCC partners as a primary resource in that as well. So with that, a few reminders. Your date, time, and location for your first meeting should be identified. Even if you had to extend it because of things going on in your own organization at this point, hey, that's okay. But put a target on your calendar. This is way too easy to let slide because it's hard work, it takes intention, and it's new work. So I encourage you to have a target date. It's part of your goal setting, really. Recruitment never ends. You guys are doing a great job on that. I'm super excited about all the diversity and the wide net that you're casting on that. So congratulations. Don't forget that, we're pretty far into this and we've had a couple months off. So, re-energizing yourselves as a team and recommitting your energy and enthusiasm as you're communicating the vision statement is really important to building that momentum in your organization. Adapt it to local resources and scope. I'm really happy to hear that most of you are doing that, and I'm really happy to hear that you're feeling good about that. You should feel good about that. There's no guilt in this process whatsoever. You're making progress, you're moving forward, and that's what we want to see, and you're following an intentional process. And don't sit with roadblocks. All right, so we have our last two coaching calls, August 17th and August 30th. So please feel free to reach out to us and connect with us on that if you haven't already. I'm going to let Boris walk you through this slide right here, and I'm actually going to jump off. I apologize, but my son is actually in recovery and I can go see him, so I'm going to jump off. But if you have any questions, I am really happy to address them on email or give me a call. Lindsay is also on, so she may be able to help with some of that as well. So Boris, I'm going to turn it over to you and jump off.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Libby. And yes, it's amazing that you were able to deliver such a powerful presentation given the circumstances of doing it from the hospital with your kid being in surgery. And even though you're so used to these surgeries, it's still an amazing feat, and we're grateful and thankful for your time. And I certainly wish all the best to Nicholas in recovery and all of you together as a family. So I will cover the last two slides and let people go
Great.
early.
Thank you, Boris.
Take care.
Bye, everybody.
So everybody, just to reiterate the team presentation for the capstone event. You have here just a few suggestions for what you could convey, and all of this is also contained in the document saved on the website under capstone event called Team Presentation Guide. And you can talk about a few things, highlighting your process, what you've done, highlighting your materials, and you can bring those to the event, but you can also share them with us ahead of time, and we can post them on the community side of our portal for everybody to see and enjoy and learn from. Your results, your lessons learned, and all of the above. You can talk about what has gone well for you and why. What are some of the areas in which you've been successful? What are you the proudest of? And also touch on what has gone less well and why do you think that is? What do you think that you started out to accomplish but maybe didn't quite get to? What maybe some of the reasons why you didn't quite get there yet, contributing factors, barriers, and what have you tried to do and address them, as well as what do you plan to do going forward to actually get to those things that you think are really important? Or have you done some course adjustments on your objectives? Outline those as well. How are you using the insights in general to plan the course of action for the future in the short term as well as the long term. So those are some of the things that I wanted to impart to the teams as you prepare. And again, Engage website is your go-to source for all the information on our end about guidance and instructions, as well as reimbursement policy and all that we have covered already. I am thinking that it might be a good thing to open up for questions, both about the capstone event and any logistical questions that people may have, as well as the content questions. I know Libby has gone away from the webinar, but Lindsay is still here, and there's some veterans here who can also help answer some of the questions. So I'm just going to pause it, and feel free to either chat in the chat box any questions or comments, or simply unmute yourself and speak up on the phone.
Can you hear me? This is Mary from Sacramento.
Yes, we can hear you, Mary.
I just wanted to clarify that you are encouraging us to bring our advisors if they're available to the capstone event?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes. And Mary, I don't know if you were there in the beginning of the webinar. I did go through some of the guidelines for reimbursement. We can also reimburse up to 4 people from each hospital, up to a certain dollar amount. And those, among those, yeah, you can totally include your PFAs in that as well.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Boris, this is Roberta. So if we have patient family advisors, they should be registered just as we would so that we can keep a good head count?
Exactly. Yeah, register everybody. It's a very simple process. Again, there's no fee, and there's even reimbursement. So, but we do need everybody to register. So as you do it yourself, and as you encourage other people to register themselves, just reiterate that registration online is simple and quick and needed.
Thank you.
Boris, this is Mary again. One more question. So it's a maximum of 4 and a maximum of $250 per person. The maximum
Correct.
is 1,000, and you could distribute it across 10 people.
Yeah, correct.
This is C. Brownlee. Has that invitation gone out so that we could get it on our calendar and the actual link to register?
This has gone out through a reminder about today's webinar, which was sent yesterday. And in the subject line, it contained the words, I think, 24-hour reminder or something like that. So if you can resurrect that email that was sent from HQI yesterday, you should be able to. All of that stuff is in there, and the link to the website and registration and all that. But if you don't have it, just send me a quick email. I can certainly resend it, and Roberta, I know for you guys at Sutter, can do it as well for everybody.
Okay, thank you.
And Roberta, you're asking about creative ideas that others have done to represent their capstone experience. We've done a Patients on Board program about 2 years ago, and we had 11 hospitals part of that collaborative. And a lot of them did PowerPoints, but a few of them also brought their patient advisors and gave them different speaking roles. Some of those patient advisors, one in particular, was an amazing speaker, and it was just captivating to hear him recount his story and also his really broad-minded advice for the hospital that he was from. We had people do little acts and little skits about how they felt in the beginning, and how in the beginning of the program feeling overwhelmed and feeling like they can't really accomplish this, and they used metaphors and pictures to depict that. And then as they progressed through the program and felt more empowered, and especially when they got to a stage of having a successful first meeting held, they felt very differently than from the beginning. So they kind of depict that almost emotional journey through not believing that you can actually engage families and patients in this way, to feeling like, wow, this is an amazing thing that is now nowhere, that is now are not going to go away, because we are fully on board and we know how to do it. So, and then people use videos as well. and you know, these days it's very easy to capture your videos. You can capture your things that you want to capture through your videos. You can certainly film things that you can't bring to the capstone event. You can film people who are not able to attend. So just use your creativity and imagination. The sky's the limit, really. But videos are acceptable, absolutely. And Roberta at Sutter in Fairfield has a technology to show the video right there in the room for all of us. So the most important thing is by September 2nd, all of the, whatever you're presenting on, whatever format, should be sent to OSMA so that we can be as prepared as possible at the actual event. Any other questions? Are there any questions for Lindsay on the on the program, on the content that we heard from Libby today? All right. So I will forward on. If there are any questions, then you can still chat them in, or you can certainly email us offline, and we'll respond quickly. I will close the webinar now because, among other things, we have heard your feedback. Some of you have commented, and we really appreciate that. That you wanted us to tighten this up a little bit and let you go before the full hour and a half. And even though we have chosen to keep the report outs in the beginning because we feel like they're important for building the community and the sense of learning from each other, we are ending today a little bit earlier than what was scheduled. So you have here a link to your evaluation for today's webinar. If you just click on that, it should take you right there into the SurveyMonkey. A quick reminder that our next learning session is on the 31st of August, and that is Gateway number 5, Sustainability Practices. You have we said that already? I can't remember if we mentioned this already or not. 2 opportunities for office hours, so use them up. Your homework is draft first meeting agenda for review and send it to Libby by the 15th of August. And by the 2nd of September, again, have we said this already? Send your capstone event slides and any other presentation materials to OSMA and register for capstone event at this link. So with that, I would like to thank all of you for the time that you took out of your busy schedule to join us today. A special thanks to Libby, as I already mentioned, for sharing and being with us and enriching our world and our knowledge of this, even at the moments when she has a son in the hospital. And thank you so much for attending. We'll see you soon, and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Thanks,
Bye.
Boris.